Welcome back.
Welcome, everyone. This is the 17th episode of the Slide In podcast. I'm Braeden Anderson alongside Kelly Gallup.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for watching. Been reading the comments. It's getting funner every time.
You're having a good time.
Ironically, I get better looking, too. You? Not so much.
I haven't even been drinking. Today's show is brought to you by
SlideIn.com. We really appreciate, we see a lot of influence out of these coming to our online stores. Really appreciate it. It's the only way we can do this is because you all are buying on there. Really appreciate it. We had a bunch of hats out here the other day, and somebody in town asked me if that's all we sold. We sell everything. Everything in our stores is online. We got every fly tying material, every rod reel line, everybody's line, everything there is, every fly, everything's on there. So I was hoping the guy was kidding, but I'm not sure he was. We got 4 hats in our store.
Yeah, just 4. No, there's 30 styles of hats up there right now. Oh, my
God, who knows?
Shirts.
So many.
Cool things that we're doing with the shirts now, we're printing them ourselves. So we've got, they're less expensive to you than when we were getting them from another company. But we've got a bunch of different stickers, or essentially logos, a bunch of different colors of shirts, and we just make them for you.
It's kind of like one of my first jobs in Traverse City, Arnie's Funland. And we had a go-kart, mini golf, blah, 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 batting cages, but we had a T-shirt shop. And man, we stamped more of those freaking T-shirts. What a blast. But
support the business.
Support the business. We really appreciate it. Yeah. I'm the worst at calling this out, SlideIn.com, or what is the other one? Watch and
like and subscribe.
Yeah. I mean, shit. We've been doing these things for 15, and I never say that stuff. And it's amazing. People hit it, and they do it. When we say it, it really does help us out. We appreciate it. It's how we're going to be able to keep doing these and the fishing show when we start filming that again. So it means a lot to us, and thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, we couldn't do it without you.
No, they're fun to do. So appreciate everybody for supporting. And on that
if I make enough money, I can fire him and get a real guy.
Okay, guys, don't support too much. So on that note, fishing shows are coming back. We got our first kind of warm up here, but we were twiddling our thumbs and didn't really see it coming too much. So the next time we get a good warm up, we're going to
30 below to 50.
Yeah, I almost didn't believe it was going to happen.
Everything's a mud pile.
Turn the snow all rotten. Yeah. But next one of these big warm-ups, we'll get out and start shooting again. So we'll be back on the water soon. I know everybody really enjoys those ones too. So we're going to keep doing the podcast. We're going to figure out kind of what our schedule is going to look like. But we'll make sure everything's kind of included.
Got any input? Bring it.
Yeah. Love the input. Where you want to see us fish, what you want to see us fish, talk about, any of that. Leave it in the comments. We read them. I read them. So today, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the White River and some other fisheries. We spent a lot of time talking about that in the last episode. But there was a story you told me early on in your time down there when fishing streamers wasn't very common and you're kind of on the pioneering edge
No one
of it.
fished streamers.
Nobody fished
streamers.
Period.
End of discussion. One man, and I don't know why nobody took, because he was doing it long before I was. I was in the 80s, but he was, nobody's ever heard of this guy. His name is Dave Whitlock, like one of the most famous guys in the history of the world.
Google him.
Oh my God. And what a superior man, just such a great human being. But Dave did, but he didn't do it a lot. But I remember there's a picture of him. He's holding a brown trout like this, and that thing's a 3-footer, I guarantee you. And he's sitting there like middle of the day, and he got it on him sculpin. But never
sculpin?
Yep. Yeah. But never really talked about it. It's on the cover of a book, I think. It's one of a multitude of pictures, I think, or it might be on the inside. But Dave was there. But Dave, they did a lot more nymph fishing always there, and it just never really took off. And it probably never would have had not I mean, I don't know. It's kind of an arrogant statement. There was very few people there fishing. There's nobody fishing streamers in the day. And then there was a handful of guys that went down from Michigan, mostly in the winter, mostly to fish beds. And I was one of those guys that did that and then went back in the summer and in the spring and fished it. And not like, because those guys, most of them are down there just fishing at night and raking beds. That's all we're doing. And I did that too one winter. I don't remember, it was a long time ago. But it didn't appeal to me at all. And then I went back for whatever reason and fished in the summer and streamer fished it. And it was like, holy smokes, wow, this is real. Nobody out there, if they're out there, they're fishing nymphs and jigs and stuff like that. And then Dally's opened up, and
for those that don't know, what's Dally's?
Dally's was a fly shop. Steve Dally was the manager of that shop, and Jim Dugan owned it. And Steve, I think, got the idea to have this, to promote the river. They, by the way, did not fish streamers either. Nobody did. I mean, Davey Watton, a really good friend of mine, I went down there, and I was doing the sow bug roundup, and we went out fishing, and I pulled out a streamer, and he goes, they don't eat those here, like I've heard everywhere in the world, and if they do, and he fished them, but they'd only fish them during shad kills. And casts later, things changed on a yellow stack blonde. But even then, and then Dally's did, well, they were all nymph guys. And
about what year are we talking?
15 years ago, maybe 17, I don't know. Because I think we did the Streamer Love Fest for 13 years, and then COVID hit. I would say around 15 years. And that's a funny story too, because Alex Lufkus, another Michigan guy, he's guided down there forever. And he went into Dally's and asked Chad Johnson, who is Dally's head guide. He's the guy, last week when we were talking about going up the river, we were talking about the white, and he's the one I was in the boat with, where he said, look over here for this. I saw something huge over here.
Shadow.
Yeah, and we saw it. But at any rate, he asked Chad if he hadn't, and Alex says that he really almost didn't answer. He almost stopped before this happened. Had he stopped, we wouldn't be talking about this at all, I don't think. But he asked him if he had an extra 8 weight, I think, or 9 weight. I don't remember what it was. I know they fish a lot heavier rods than I do. Alex and Russ, they're all buddies. And Chad, I believe the quote was, well, there's no stripers in the river. And that's when Alex balked and said he probably shouldn't have said it. And he pulled out his camera and started showing Chad these giant brown trout that they're catching on streamers. And the rest is history. And then shortly thereafter, the next year, I believe, and then Alex went out, I believe the story goes, don't quote me, Alex went the very next day and was backing out a wildcat and got his biggest brown trout of his life. And I'm not so sure he wasn't trolling it out backwards, like just rowing out, which is one of the best runs in the rivers within 100 feet of that freaking landing. I see Don in there all the time fishing bait and crushing giant fish. But any rate, then we did the Streamer Love Fest, which I did, I think, 12 years of that with those guys trying to promote the thing. But the very first year, it seems like there was 40-some people there from states everywhere just wanting to be a part of the streamer thing, So 40 boats, something like that was just amazing. Yeah. People from California,
from 0 to
Florida, everywhere, from nobody, 0. I mean, I had 10 years where I never saw. Well, it was before Dally's, and then really even in the beginning when Dally's, they did Streamer Love Fest that first couple of years of their existence, and that just blew it up, and then. But even so, I mean, I mean, if you were there before, I can't remember what year I did an article I was writing an article for Gaston's, and I rented a boat, right? You can rent boats, and they mentioned, everyone I spoke to, and all the fly shops, the same thing, told me that, yeah, it's too bad they don't eat streamers here. And but that's before I wrote the books.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I'm going to throw streamers. Yeah, they don't really eat those here. Okay, all right, whatever. And in the first years that I was down there, I didn't. I threw nymphs and, egg patterns. And I mean, we did just like we were down, because mostly they're always in December and January a little bit. And then they and then 9/11 hit and they closed the dam. You couldn't fish up there for a while. And so, and we just walked in up there, but it was different. The fishing, I think, was better after, because we figured out how to run boats. And, I went down and ran a boat, and I can't by myself. And it was better afterwards. But I still fished around the state up at the very top most of the time when I was down there, first 10 years, 15. It was all walkway. And it was indicative of the flow. Get there on a icy, shitty day, and you're going to, they're generating power down to Tulsa. You're not stepping in that water. And get there the next day and you walk across it, right? It's not, who knows? But it was different. But I truly don't think it was better. I don't think it was. But we weren't really into the whole streamer gig that hard yet.
Yeah.
I mean, we were throwing them. You always threw them, but not the specific types of flies and stuff like that, and the bigger flies.
When do you think that the kind of large change in your strategy was, where it became more similar to how it is today? Like, at some point you started throwing streamers, you'd throw them some, probably not on
Late
sinking
90s.
lines yet.
Late 90s.
And you were over at the White at that time.
Yeah, but I wasn't doing so much. Still was just bastardizing lines and trying to figure things out. But it was still going down there more for the winter fishery.
Yeah. And then,
But-
early 2000s, mid 2000s.
Oh, then it was game on.
started to
wide
kind
open.
of more
Yeah.
look a little bit more like your game does today.
Yeah, late 90s.
Yeah.
Early 2000s.
And did it turn on immediately?
Yes. Instant.
When
without
was like
question.
the light bulb, or was there a specific moment where
On
like,
that
oh,
river
man,
or just the river?
on that river? We're like, oh, they do eat them here.
Well, I don't remember what year it was. It was in early 90s, I think. Mid, I don't know. I can't remember. To tell you the truth. I got it. I probably figured out from some old journals. But the first night that I went there and threw a streamer,
Yeah.
the bulb lit up pretty quick. First cast, like a 7-pounder.
Yeah, what I was gonna say, what did the bulb look like?
Yeah.
Big in? Did it have spots?
I mean, it didn't even. But before that, you knew the fish were there because we fished them in the winter when they were spawning, and you could see them. I mean,
Yeah, you knew they were there.
You're looking at giants. Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, it was the same as everywhere, though. I mean, the same shit. They don't eat streamers here, but you gotta when you're talking about that, people were talking about streamers. Remember, that's a gray ghost, a Mickey fin, a black-nosed dace, and a royal coachman, and a muddler,
Yeah,
and a matuka, and a spruce.
a lot of
All
inch
flies
to
this long.
2-inch flies.
Incredibly tiny profile, no matter what.
Slim.
Matuka would be the biggest, or a muddler, and still relatively small.
And none of them really have a lot of moving materials on
Not
them,
really,
right?
and a lot of them, and we didn't necessarily have the sinking line. We had no technology. We had nothing. You could, you had tips, you had a few lines up there, but nothing was dedicated to streamer fishing. And it doesn't, and it's still like that in a lot of places where you go. And I think part of it was reluctance to learn something new, and part of it was that maybe they just didn't want it to top being dry fly and nymph, wet fly. It was out of, I mean, it's not like this hasn't been, I mean, you can go back into Joe Brooks and see Joe Brooks fishing Chile and Argentina with giant streamers.
Yeah.
We didn't invent something here.
Right.
This is not, we just changed the way we did it. We changed the angles and the size of the flies. I don't know, stacked blonde still. I'll put a blonde against any fly in the world, actually. And that's Joe Brooks or his Comet, either one. It was always around, but fly fishing wasn't. Fly fishing's been here for a long time, but fly fishing, like, now it's an acronym for being outside almost. It's like every freaking commercial. And we were just talking about that last week about, I can't remember which. I tried to get a hold of a guy from GM because they kept having such shitty commercials. GM, if you're listening, anybody at GM, you don't cast a spinner with a fly rod. It was like every commercial had some ass with his fly rod out there. And, I remember there's a guy with a spinning rod and he's going like this. And I'm like, you're spending a lot of money. Ask somebody that fishes. Put your vest on right. That would be cool. Okay. Do anything right. Don't look like fly fishing's part of the world and you should appeal to it, and you don't spend 10 minutes to make the person fly fishing. Or how about this? Hire somebody that's ever fly fished. There's pretty people out there.
This is an aside. It blows my mind that people in marketing departments don't find subject matter experts. Like watching Yellowstone, watching somebody wave a fly rod around like this. You see it in golf commercials all the time where they hire some gal who's pretty and she doesn't know how to swing a golf club worth a damn.
There's a one for fishing in Florida, and it's an ad. It's in the in-flight magazines, and it's got a person who is theoretically fly fishing. It's not nothing's real, right? Other than the person. The rod's got 4 guides on it.
Oh my God.
And it's I don't know if it is the dumbest. It's like a sunset. Somebody's casting a fly, and you can see where they drew these things in a fake rod. I'm like, holy shit! You can't afford to go out and get a rod, and there's a lot of guides in a bar that would go out and take that picture, and there's a lot of
for free.
We could get Nicholas to go out and do Florida's ad. He's a very handsome man, and you would have one. He's a guide down there, but I mean. It just blows my mind because fly fishing, that's the whole point of this. Fly fishing wasn't fly fishing until really the 80s it starts 70s. It was still the same old guys, and the whole dry fly only for the most part. And then 80s, it's starting to come around, right? And it's a little bit more household term like, the Johnsons went fly fishing in Colorado, right? It becomes a lifestyle thing in the 90s, and that freaking movie comes out, or runs through it, comes out. That blew a hole in it for a while. And then so I mean, when you're thinking about it, when you're saying, well, there was nobody doing it back then, they weren't doing it anything. They just weren't fishing.
Yeah, they weren't just a fraction of the percentage of people.
It truly, I mean, the river runs through it, brought it to the forefront, and that's when it became just I swear, every truck had an ad they had a fly fisherman in the background, right? And I don't think I've ever seen one I mean, we guided Bill Ford. I wanted to call Bill and say, why don't you come out? And who is your advertising agency that you can't find, if fly fishing's that important to you, that you can't find somebody that knows which way the reel's supposed to be sitting? I remember watching that one cat had his reel upside down, reeling it backwards on TV, for God's sakes. It's like, it's one thing if it's in an ad in a magazine, but it's actually...
probably most people don't care, but we give a shit because we know, right?
You care enough to advertise to people you are putting fly fishing in an ad.
You should care.
You should care.
Yeah.
You are an idiot, and your ass should be fired. It's like, you're too dumb. That one guy, there's one that comes up, and they're all out, and they're fly fishing, but they got spinning rods and they got spinners in their vest, their fly fishing vest with their patch on it, right? But they show the guy fly fishing, right? And catches a fish. It's awful. You can see it's so awful. It's ridiculous. It doesn't matter. That's just a tangent. It's a rant.
I could rant about that for hours.
Yeah, hours. But the rant being that back then, there just wasn't that many people. So you just, and most people just went and dry fly fished, really. They just cast around. I mean, same thing the first time I went to Chile, first 3 year time, they don't do that here. And then things were a little different. That was in the 2000s and early, or maybe late 90s. And then it changed in a hurry. Now, the only thing that changed it was social media. It just suddenly everybody was out there. If we didn't have Facebook and Instagram and all that, it would still be, fly magazines had a little push in the beginning. They were reluctant too. They were reluctant. It was just people didn't break out of that mold too quickly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when I was skiing. I was a freestyler, right? Those guys didn't like us.
No.
In the 70s when Hart came out with their shorter ski, right? 175 freestyle. It was a bump ski. And all these guys said, "Oh, you guys make flat bumps." And I said, "You're so full of shit. I go into those pieces. You slide into the things with your 220s. I go through them." But it didn't catch on. It died completely. Same thing with this, but it kind of got a grip, and it suddenly was like, now everybody's doing it. But I would say it was somewhere in the early 2000s, after modern streamers came out, you started seeing it was people your age and younger had enough of the dry fly only game.
The orchestra.
Yeah. The upstream dry fly, as I used to tell them, I says, we left England for a reason. We didn't like the way they fished. Had nothing to do with politics, dude. Gilly telling you when you can cast to the fish, that's what screwed us. We left. We knew we wanted to fish streamers even back then, even though we didn't.
We'll make that into an Instagram clip, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so this brings you to a completely different question. I do want to get back to that. I remember having a long discussion with Matt and maybe Chuck and Lyndon, who's a great client of the Slide In. He comes to both fly shops a lot. He's in the North Slide a ton. We chatted for quite some time, maybe 2 hours one day, about personalities in kind of reference to the style of fly fishing they prefer. And we're wondering if there's parallels between skiing and fly fishing. Like, for example, I tele-ski a lot. I also love spay fishing. Those seem to kind of attract.
The jokes I have.
I know, attract
right
the same
now.
Annoying,
Damn, if you'd only said Euro.
I know. Well, I think Euro's cross country. That was my. I think Euro is cross country. It's like, yeah, it's kind of skiing.
Yeah,
it's close.
That could be an insty. So what was the question?
So
there's a parallel between.
Yeah, and so what Lyndon was talking about, I think he originally brought it up, but like, when you think of a streamer angler, you think of, a young kid in a hoodie blasting rap music or Alice in Chains.
I don't think of that.
Well,
I think loading a gun. I'm just kidding.
But
before you go on,
yep.
Way back, I mentioned this sometime about, not sure if it was a podcast or if it was something else, but in the 2000s sometime, it gets a little hazy because it starts out in Marlowe's Bar in Denver on 6th Street, and Rick Pope and I and some other people, and we're doing what you're supposed to do at a sports show, trying to drink Marlowe's dry. And it came up about there was a kid in there, and he didn't like competition. And I said, I like it. I think it brings out the best in everybody. I didn't mean the way it turned out, but I mean, I like seeing, I just think competition's good for people. I mean, I watched what it did in the bass world. I mean, you can take Joey Lunchbucket that's maybe fished 2 tournaments his life, knows everything there is about fishing. They can watch it, they can see it. The best anglers show what they do. I mean, everybody goes like this.
It pushes
right?
the envelope.
Completely.
The rising tide lifts all ships. Competition breeds innovation.
Kids
right?
coming along. I mean, shit, when I was skiing, I remember we had the 3 world champions there. There was me and there was another kid from Traverse City. I think it was, I don't remember, but it was Clendenin, the 3 world champions, O'Leary, Clendenin, and Ferguson, I think, and at Sugarloaf. And these are the best. Eddie Ferguson's called Airborne Eddie Ferguson, right? Ends up doing all the schools and out in Tahoe with the water jumps so you can learn to do all this shit without breaking your neck. And a big hit was a back, and a giant hit was a back with a full twist, called a Mobius back then, right? So if you could drop a backflip, there's a great picture of Brian O'Keefe, who was one of them. He was a gymnast, but he's a great athlete.
This is the same flying photographer.
You know,
yeah.
He's a great photographer. He's a
Renaissance
greater fisherman, if that can be done. But Brian's doing a backflip in this red jumpsuit off this endless cliff. It's like Lake Tahoe is out there, and it's just endless. He could be 10,000 feet in the air. But that set the bar.
Right.
You could do a backflip. Wow, holy shit, you're the best in the world. Shit, now, I mean,
Quad cork 2160.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't watch
shit.
much the
I watched
X Games,
Jeremy do that thing freeheeling off of Chad's Gap, and what did he do? 2 or 3 backs and 3 rolls, and lands this thing at 160 feet or some shit. Competition did that. I learned how to do a front flip by looking at Stein Eriksson's book. Stein Eriksson died 4 years ago, one of the greatest Olympians in history, and popularized parallel skiing. And he had a book, and he's hitting a kicker that's about 20 inches high. Looks like he's on flat ground doing it. He reaches up like this, and he kicks off in these 220s. He's, probably 5'7", 5'6", 140 pounds, 50 pounds, I don't know. I mean, skis are longer, they're just gigantic. How to do it? Well, that's how we learn. And so it's just like anything else. You watch that drives people up. So we're back in Marlowe's, and we're drinking, and I'm saying how it's great for the business. And this kid says, he thinks I'm full of shit. Well, wrong time to be saying that kind of thing. And I looked at this pissant, and I'm like, who the f*** are you? And he's some associate editor of something. He's 20 or some shit from the East Coast. And I said, oh, perfect. I should drown you in your drink, you pissant. But it gets kind of heated, and it gets ugly. Now the editor of the magazine, it ends up, he says, why don't you do an article about this? And it came, I know I've said this on another podcast, but it comes out where it was John Gierach and I and another guy, and it was called The Generation Gap. And what you said, it started with you saying a kid in a hoodie, right? And it wasn't quite that, but it shows Sparse Gray Hackle, who was this famous writer. I don't know about fishermen. He wrote more about shit than he actually did. But it was your typical 60s tweed jacket and whatever goofy hat and the ascot and all this shit and the pipe and the glasses and very good, old man. There's that. And then there's this kid. He's got shorts and flip-flops. He's got a beer in his pocket and a rod, and he's going upriver, and he's a streamer angler. And it's called The Generation Gap. And it's just like, holy shit, nail it with that kid, right? He's not enough mustard in the ballpark. Boy, get out of my way. And he's heading up. He's just fishing. He doesn't look right. He doesn't have the right shit with him. He's fishing. He doesn't care. And that's where it went. And so, I forget where we started on that.
I would love to hear people write in and
What were we talking about before that?
personalities.
Oh,
of fishing.
personalities. Okay, about the
I'd love to
skiing
see
thing.
people write in about, the type of individual they envision with the different discipline of fly fishing. So, say streamer, Euro, dry fly.
It'd be great if they're all cartoonists.
Yeah. No, if you could do
I'll post
cartoons,
anyone that's funny.
yeah, email it to us, slidein.com. Is that where we're at, right?
I think so.
I think we changed it to that. Shout out Matt. I'm sure he did all that.
But the parallels to the skiers.
Yeah.
Because we also talked about that a couple weeks ago about how guides came from ski bums. And there was a lot of that.
Well, we were talking about Scotty Hall. Scotty Hall was a pro bump skier back in the day. Unbelievable skier.
Scotty Hall was called cardiac air. he could air it out, man.
There's this great poster of him. I got him on the whiskey one night at his place, and he finally admitted to having this thing and went and found it and showed me. But it's him and Shane McConkey's on there too. It's like, Shane McConkey's one of the greatest skiers ever. Changed the sport. Everybody looks up to him. They were part of the Miller High Life, I believe, 1994 pro ski team. And Scotty's up there with the Iron Cross. And he's got his tongue out, and he's pointing at the camera. It's just the coolest shit I've ever seen.
It doesn't hurt that Scotty's one of the handsomest men that ever lived.
He's a handsome fella. I told him, I was instructing with him the other day. I said, hey, we talked about you in the podcast. And he goes, I haven't listened to one of those things. I can't stand listening to either you idiots talk.
Wait till he's on here. He's going to be here shortly.
He'll be on here one of these things. But so I think I would love to hear what people think, parallels between any sport, really anything in life, and fly fishing. Because I always think those are kind of funny. If you can meet someone and predict what their favorite style of fishing is.
Be interesting. Never put it together with the cross-country thing.
I think Euro's cross country.
Yeah, well,
If you can even do jobs, accountants.
Yeah, I never really thought of this. Now I will. I got a lot of.
Yeah, we'll come back to it next week once those wheels turn. But yeah, like the tele skiing into spay fishing.
Well, if I could go back in time, it'd be a lot easier because before there was the bump tour, we had. There was freestyle had 3 different categories, right? You had aerials, you had bumps, and you had ballet. And I did a show with Wayne Wong once too when he was the ballet. He told me how to do a Wayne Wong banger, pole flips, and some other stuff. He was great.
I'm surprised you don't have a fly called a Wong banger.
He's still, he might have died by now, I don't know, I think so, I hope not. God, he was great. But, so you had this ballet thing, to me, which would be upstream only dry fly fishing.
Yep.
And that lasted about a month, that was a year old or 2, it came and went, Wayne was really fast when he would do it, everybody else was barely moving. But then you had the bumps, because it's different now, because when we had competition, you got this badass bump run that hadn't been hadn't been groomed in a while. Music's blaring. You start at the top and you got judged by the bottom.
Yep.
And you could do anything you wanted off those things, right? Now it's a flush. You know what a flush is, right?
Uniform.
Well, yeah, it's just a flush is just a solid set of gates that go 1, 2, 3, 4. They're not offset anyway. And so you got your man-made jumps, and then you've got that. Our style was definitely streamer fishing.
Yes.
Because, you air launch off a 5-foot bump and it throws you 30 feet in the air and you come in the field, good luck.
Yeah.
Things are going to go wrong occasionally. Yeah. You're going to case one of those things and never move. And so...
Ski racing might be Euro.
No.
There's a similar
downhill
kind of
downhill might
intensity,
well,
nerdy.
what kind of ski racing?
Any of them. It's a personality thing. It's like there's, the park rats might be nymphing eggs.
See, I see those. Yeah. There's a lot of ways we can get in trouble here.
I don't know.
All I remember,
I'm making it up at this
I used
point.
to they don't probably do it as much anymore, but when I was there, because I skied with Nixon, so, when we were kids so much, and And there used to be this gal, her name's Lynn Wright, one of the prettiest girls in our school. And I called her the runt racer. She's a short little thing, right? And runt racer. And beautiful woman, though. And she was good. And and then the other gal, if you've ever seen me come to show, it's called Brought to You by Haggerty Insurance. That's Tammy Haggerty. She was spectacular. I'd take Nick and Tammy and Lynn, and you'd see, and I'd see him in the hallway, and I'd do this to him. You can't see me if you're listening, but they couldn't make a turn without dropping their arm like they're busting a gate.
Yeah, gosh.
So they're going down and they're like this, you know. You see them doing this as they're making turns. There's no freaking gates out there. You don't have to bump. But back then, they were bamboo.
Yeah.
So it hurt like hell. You better get your gate lane over.
Yeah, you better get.
And they didn't. It was before, amazingly, very few people even wore pads.
Yeah.
And those things would go into you, right?
Well, back when men were men. Huh?
Oh, it was different. But enough of that. But that's a good analogy. That'll be great. There'll be 1,000. Well, probably not a lot of non-skiers writing in, but right there's going to be a bunch of shit on this.
Well, I also like the parallels to music. You know, you've made that comment a few times that Drive Fly's like a symphony, and
yeah.
And Streamer Fishing's like Ted Nugent.
Stranglehold.
Yeah.
Yes. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ted.
Yeah.
Yeah. A buddy of mine called me and told me that Jimmy Ferraro called me and he says, I heard you talking to him. I didn't know you. He says, I used to work for Ted. He was bodyguard or something. And I said, yeah, I know. And he told me, I said, I worked stage security for him a couple times and in Michigan. And he says, do you have any of his books? I said, no, I didn't know I'm a fan. I'm not a groupie.
Yeah.
But I'm a fan of them, particularly like Stranglehold and Hey Baby. But I'll get you one. So he called Ted and he sent me a book.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's going to go up in the Wall of Fame right there.
Oh, yeah.
It'll go up there beside John Wayne, just in case any of you Queen Rush or dead people see what it's about.
I'm going to sneak a picture of Jerry Garcia in there.
I'm sure there's one up there
even
anyway. Chris always was putting that shit up.
Yeah.
But that'll be interesting to see what everybody says about the every style. I mean, and it's the same, like with bass fishing, it used to always be Bubba. They're just Bubbas, just a bunch of old redneck Bubbas. And I'm like, God, that drove me crazy. Yeah, Bubba's sitting out there with a $100,000 boat and a $100,000 truck and $100,000 worth of shit in that boat. But Bubba must have hawked the trailer. Yeah. Come on, give me a break. Bubba.
I come from Washington, and me and my buddies, we fished out there a lot together. Always used to make jokes about the Russians. Those are the guys you got to look out for. It's not Bubba's, it's Russians. There's a couple places we'd like to go steelhead.
Yeah.
You'd show up, and there's like 40 Russians chain smoking cigarettes, illegally, snagging salmon off reds.
Salmon.
And the game wardens nearby was like, they've all got guns. I'm not going in there. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
So it was always a bummer when you show up there and you see all the Russians. Not to get political, but
you just did, I think.
Oops. Don't kill me. I'm just a guy. So back to our original discussion, unless you have anything else you want to talk about with.
I'm not sure where we started.
Well, we started with what it was like fishing streamers, kind of being on the leading edge of streamer fishing around the world. Are there any other specific moments in time where you remember someone telling you, they don't eat streamers here, and you're like, okay.
I truly don't ever. I've never been anywhere that haven't told me that. Because even, especially before the book came out, after the book came out, it was a little easier, but it wasn't like the 3 years previous to writing the book, the 3 years leading up to it. That was heavy duty. No matter where, it doesn't matter, even in Michigan. I mean, that's where I was mostly, or Wisconsin, or come out here. Hell, when we first moved in here, I swear to God, every guide I met told me it's too bad they don't eat streamers here. And I mean, some are my friends now.
Yeah.
They forgot that they said that, a lot of them. And I said, yeah. And I mean, without exception, of course they all come in, everybody's puffed up like, a bunch of rutting bucks coming in. It's like, who are you? Just some guy. And it's like, why are you gonna, Too bad they don't eat streamers here. Yep. You know,
You're right.
You're right. Would you like a cup of coffee with that? And then, everywhere though, everywhere I've ever been in my life, you just jump a county. Jump a county where you're from. And jump a state. Oh my God, they would never do that. Oh, you'll scare our fish all off. New Zealand. Oh, you'll ruin all the fish, or you'll scare all the fish. There's only a few. Such bullshit. And it had to come from, and this, I don't care how offensive this really sounds, it comes from complete freaking ignorance. Yeah. You've never freaking tried, because had you wouldn't have 20 people doing it a day now. And so it was just this absolute, it's like this in anything you do in the world. Your team is your team, and if you don't like it, it doesn't work, right? And it really is every sport in the world. I mean, you just got done making fun of all the, you're comparing the Euro guys to the karate, whatever it was.
I just offended about everybody.
Everybody you can. Yeah. But it's how people did it. They would come out and they would say, those don't work here. Oh, you've tried it a lot? Where's your streamer rod? Oh, you don't have one. Oh, you threw a freaking Mickey, which blows my mind because they eat the shit out of it. Yeah, right. And on a floating line, I don't care how you do it. They're going to eat it anyway. They're fish or fish. But it's everything, I remember when the Taekwondo guys, or the judo guys, there's a guy, Jim Sheffer, used to always say to me about the Taekwondos, dancers. Everybody is pissed about, boxers didn't like this guy, and this guy doesn't like that guy, and, archery guys compounds don't like recurve doesn't like long, but,
What's the saying I heard somebody say, and I always butcher it, it's something along the lines of, everybody's an asshole unless you're in my boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my term.
That's yours?
Well, I don't know. I didn't hear it.
But how's it properly said?
Definition of an asshole, anybody that's not in our boat.
There we go, that's what it is. I gotta write that down, that's a good one. Yeah, add that to the book of quotes. Chris Christopherson has a song about that too. Everybody hates what they don't understand.
Yeah.
Now he's saying it in terms of race and all the different people hating each other. It's
pretty easy how it all turns into racism of a sort, because it's ignorance. That's the whole point. Yep. You don't like it. That commercial was on the Super Bowl, and you got Snoop and Brady. I hate you because, you look different from me. I hate you because, and the last thing Snoop says is, or one of them said, I think it was Snoop says, I hate we had to make that commercial. It's like, it's that prevalent. Irish Catholic wars, pretty big thing, across the street. Yeah. That's a little more it was just the way it is. And that's kind of our sport, every sport. I wouldn't take it to the racial end of it or the hatred end of it like that. That's bullshit. But it's like, you hear it though. Oh, God. When the streamer thing came out, I heard it. I told you that one time that Rusty Gates told me I would ruin that river. And I said, well, ruin it? That's kind of harsh.
It's probably coming from people.
That's the Asabo. Probably not going to ruin it.
It's coming from people like you said, with the ascot and the tweed coat and their, pipe that they're smoking. And
anything that takes you out of your norm, anything that ruffle grunge kids, take me out of my norm, right? And I just have nothing I can say good about them.
Yeah.
But if it was my kid, I probably wouldn't be that way, right?
Right.
But you can hate the shit out of them, just like...
We hate everything that we don't understand.
Well, I've got a couple guys that write me about after we were messing with the Euro guys, they seem to have a different level of hatred. I just like messing with them.
Well, yeah, they're sensitive and it's fun.
Well, they were like, no, I mean the guys that didn't like the Euro stuff.
Oh.
They wrote in, it was like, whoa. I was hoping I didn't come off quite like that, but...
Oh, no, I still see a lot of those comments. That video lives on. The one we did about, is your nymphing really fly fishing? Oh. Of course, we're trying to draw interest and views and comments and stuff.
Oh, what is that, clickbaiting?
Yeah, it was total clickbait, but it's fun,
It was real. But
I think people enjoyed that, and about daily, there's 2 or 3 comments on that video. They're like, thank God somebody said it. These guys have ruined fly fishing.
Like, well, that's and for those, I'm telling you, I personally heard that so many times that because of the book, that would, and I'm thinking, well, you weren't pissed off at Bates. He wrote one. I saw another one a guy wrote. It's pretty good too. Another streamer book about the same time. I'd never seen that one. I just saw it the other day. And I have it in my library. I don't know how. I was moving all the books but I mean, I would routinely hear it here, especially at the end of the day when the guys would get drunk and then they would talk shit, right? Get them big balls all of a sudden. And it would be, if that shit goes on here, we'll ruin this river. With the irony of that statement, to me, if you are somewhat of a thinker, you just told me they won't eat the son of a bitches here, so how's it going to ruin it?
Yeah.
You're the guy that said 2 weeks ago that they don't eat them here, but yet I am personally going to ruin this river if we do all that shit here. I heard it all the time. And now it's like I said, a lot of them forgot that they said it. It's like...
You think this river's ever been fishing better?
Not really. You'll take people back in the day, it'll tell you that it was better in the old days when they were planting bajillion fish in it a year.
Yeah, and there's nobody fishing it.
And there's nobody fishing it, and they're planting everything on Earth, and they just did everything they could, like most of those agencies did, to ruin everything because there's in the way they did things. But I don't think it's ever really... Everything ebbs and tides. It all goes up and down.
It all ebbs and flows.
Nothing ever has, and I try to be a little bit on the more positive side of it. You get better fish handling, you get better people. I saw a rooster, Levins, post something up on a little reel or something, and it was short. No short jokes there, Rooster. It was a short one where he's got a fish in a net, and he's sitting in the water.
Yeah.
He gets the fish in the net, and he goes, I've seen a lot of you guys out there, I've seen a lot of people in boats holding fish out of the water, up in the boat and dropping them in the boat. Let's keep them wet and down by the water. It was great, and I think you have more, the guides in particular. This is a very highly guided river.
Yeah.
It's a very hard river for people to pleasure craft in because you have to be in your A game every minute you're floating this thing. Just drop one oar stroke and put your hand up your ass just for 1 second and scratch, and you're going to hit something sideways. It's going to happen just like that, right?
It happens fast.
And you are going to feel it. When you hit a rock sideways in this boat, you hit the other side of the gunnel, and you're usually pinned under that oar. You feel it somewhere, somehow. But we have a better developed guide world than we used to. We have more concern over it. We have more use. So people are, they're more in tune to their fishery and what we have to do to protect it. And the guides in particular, they're very cautious about how you treat a fish. And so I don't think it's ever fished better. I think, and the only way you can compare this, because the people you're hearing it from have been guiding the son of a bitch for 40 years, right? Or 30 years, or God help you if it's a 5-year guide, then they know everything. But the 30-year guide would say, well, back before you were here, because I've been here 24 years, I think. And they would say, I was trying to think of my years, it's been 23 or 4, but they had no pressure. There's nobody around you.
Yeah.
So the fishing probably isn't any better. It's just that maybe 5 people went in front of you and hit that same fish, right? Mm-hmm. And so I don't think it would, I guess you could argue in either direction. It was better, but the fish counts aren't that different. And we've had higher ones, than we ever had. And we've had some middle, and not really drops, really. And so I don't think you've got an argument that it was better. And in particular, the angler skill of the anglers today is so much higher than it was when I was your age. We weren't as good as you guys. We didn't have the information highway. We didn't have the techniques. We didn't have the monofilaments and the fluoros, and we didn't have all the things we have today that make it better and easier, just like skis. It's no different. The first time I skied one of those shape skis, I mean, they told me, I kept looking at it going, what the hell? Because I'd been out of it for a while. And I remember just looking to my left and I was already over there. I hadn't even unweighted something. I hadn't pushed an edge. I just like, whoa, holy shit, I'm already over.
Think left.
Yeah,
You're there,
I'm
yeah.
already over there. It's like, whoa, what's this thing doing? Who's doing this? You know, and it's like, wow, that's unreal. But just as an overall, the fact that we're sitting here talking in a room and it's going to go out to tens of thousands of people and they're interested in it, that didn't exist back then.
Right.
And it's no different. Every sport in the world has podcasts and YouTubes and all this stuff. And so the anglers today are so much, even the bad ones, you know, ones just, that's not the new ones, not bad ones are just starting. They have more information than most people did back that would have been fishing a long time. Mm-hmm. You can sit down in a day and YouTube your ass to death and just sit there and come out and go, I know what a dry fly, a nymph, and a wet fly is. I know what gallop fishes, streamers at this time of day. You can watch anything you want.
I mean, that's kind of how I learned to fish.
I mean, I would have too had
I learned through YouTube, and then I'd go out and practice these things that I watched on the computer. We
had books, and we had American Sportsman when I was growing up. And then I never recall any Michigan Outdoors doing any fly fishing, probably did. Sure Morton F. did, but we didn't have it. And we had Wide World of Sports, but you couldn't save a show.
Right.
You couldn't do any of that stuff.
No, I used to have a bookmarked, in my.
I had bookmarks too, in a freaking book where it belongs.
Yeah, I guess I went.
I
wonder where that term came from.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, all these different, tying techniques and angling techniques.
What do I do with my trout? I was looking for trout. I think I took it home. That book.
The one that you just brought over, or no, different one?
No, trout. My regular Joe Brooks trout.
The original.
The Bible. I mean, I just stare at that. I would stare at his picture in New Zealand. It's on the cover and then it's inside again. And just stare at the water to see where he probably got the fish from. I mean, not for a minute.
Yeah.
Like minutes. Just staring and flip over to that blonde and look at the fly. And then flip over and see him with that, it's an Argentine brown. Got to be a 3-footer. It's got to be. There you go. Stacked or a blonde in its mouth.
This is random, but the men's bathroom in the Sportsman Lodge?
Sportsman's.
In the bar?
Yeah.
Can you picture the image above the urinal? It's a little creek, waterway coming through. There's a rock here, a rock there, and a rock there. Yeah, with the aspens. Yeah. Every time I'm in there, which, depending on how much I'm drinking is more often than others, I always look at that and try to figure out, I'm always arguing with myself where I think the most likely place for a big fish to be.
Have to. Mel and I were driving somewhere and we're looking at all the shit water flooding off the hay fields up on the way to Bozeman. I said, when I was a kid, I would have fished that. And she says, what, really? I said, no, seriously. If it was moving, I'd go out and pretend. I'd go out and we had a field by our house that would do the same thing. And it went into a creek and I said, well, but the creek was always blowing out and crazy. And I'd go up and throw my fly at it and stuff. But I said, but as a child, I used to just go out and I'd crawl on the creeks, just crawl on the banks and just lean over and look at watch the, you didn't have TV. There was no fishing. I mean, you had to go out and actually do it. It was fun, crawl and dig a worm up and throw it out in the river to watch, see if one would come eat it. And it was just a blast. Different world. Before shape skis.
Before shape skis. I made a reference, I think, in the lot. Maybe it was earlier today. I can't remember, but to Old Man Yells at Cloud. It's a Simpsons screenshot where it's a newspaper and it has an old guy sitting on a bench looking up and it's a completely blue sky. There's one cloud in it and he's just so whenever my dad's complaining about something, I always go, oh yeah, old man yelling at the cloud again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. And when you get old, you'll see it. Hopefully you're not one of them, but you'll see it.
What's the quote from the woman in Butte?
Not a woman, man.
Oh, it was
the oldest man in the world.
Okay, I thought it was a woman.
At that point. He said,
So he's the oldest man in the world, and he's interviewed for
U.S. maybe, I don't know. I think he's
Yeah.
114.
Yeah.
And totally articulate guy. I mean, you look at him, you'd think he was maybe 75, maybe. But I mean, just so articulate. He's got some 20-year-old girl, 25 maybe. No, she couldn't be that old. She might not even 20. But she's interviewing this guy, and it's at some town hall or whatever in Butte. And she never gets to ask the question. Somebody's been alive for 114 years. He knows what you're going to say. Yeah. he's been asked every freaking question. And every time she'd say something, she said, I don't know about that. I don't know why I lived this long. And the girl, you could see the look on her face go, what? How do you know what I was going to say? You know, it's just not putting the pieces of the puzzle together too quick. And at the very end, he says, she goes, well, and he goes, no, I don't really have any advice for anybody. She never got a question, right? She said, no, I don't have any advice. I don't know why I lived this long. He goes, well, actually I do. He says, you know, embrace change, even if you hate it. Otherwise, you'll end up one of them grumpy old bastards. And he looks right into the camera. That is classic.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I do.
That's a good way to live
Embrace
life.
change, or you'll end up a grumpy old bastard. I think I was born a grumpy old bastard.
Unless it's your own thing.
Yeah. But
just too easy to make fun
that
of.
whole thing around the world thing, it's still going on. There's still...
They don't eat streamers here.
Well, I mean, there's places you can't throw streamers. There's places you can't... I mean, a lot of places in Europe, you got to fish dry flies upstream.
Yeah.
And you got to let a ghillie tell you when it's proper to throw it. I don't know about a lot of places, but there are places that just say it still exists.
I'm conflicted on that because I'd want to go throw streamers there, but I also respect the tradition of it.
I wouldn't want to throw a streamer in there. I wouldn't even once. Well, I wouldn't mind running the itching for a couple hours just to watch them
Just to
come
see
out
what
of those
happens.
weed beds. They would eat the living shit out of it.
Cougar.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
But I also respect
on
the tradition
test.
of it.
Me too. And I would have. I've always wanted to go back and fish there. And I'd want to fish dries. I'd want to go back and do the historical thing. There's plenty of other rivers that are the same, and you just go where you. But it's not going to change. It's the same everywhere. I mean, wherever you go, they're trout or trout. That's what
trout
people
or trout.
They're not going to stop. But I would love to go back there, and I kind of. Well, it's kind of like we were talking last week about seasons. I wish we'd bring back seasons, and I don't want to infringe anybody's fun is the problem, but it wouldn't bother me if you said this is a dry fly only section, and God help us if we put a Eurostrike in, but
Those fish would leave so fast.
Or for that matter, if you put a streamer only section in.
Those fish might leave
They'd
also.
be leaving a lot faster. Be whipped to death. But some of that's okay, but there's room for everybody. Shit, it's just, I listen to it everything. I mean, I grew up, I would love to put a number on a CFS, cubic feet per second, for those who don't know what that means, and which you kind of designate rivers by that, right? So I would love to go to the Pere Marquette, understanding that it's in many places when you're rowing at 40 feet's wide spot. I mean, there's places you go through, and if a tree's down, you're dead. It's like,
bring the chainsaw
it's just
out.
not a big river. Mm-hmm. And if you went back in the 90s and saw that explosion, to see 100 boats go down the Pere Marquette, which is basically 2-3 feet deep and 30-40 feet wide in a lot of places, and have 100 boats go down that river, and you want to talk pressure and talk a river that's still just like it was. I can see a picture of the Pere Marquette. It could be January, it could be August. I don't give a shit. Show me a 5-foot section. I'll tell you right where you are. I don't even care if I can see almost from the bottom. Nothing's ever changed, ever. And my dad could do the same thing. I took him in there in the 80s. He hadn't been in there since 46. He knew every run, knew what was coming around the corner, knew everything. If you fish, you fish, right? And if you live on them, and there's a river that I thought for certain, and I'm speaking out of turn because I haven't been there for a long time, but I watched Tommy Lynch's stuff and some of the other guys back there, and Walt and some of those guys, and Baldwin Bait and Tackle stuff, and they're still catching fish like crazy, and the trout fishery's still spectacular.
Yeah, a bunch of our fishing guides are Michigan dudes.
Yeah.
Andrew and Nate and John.
Scotty.
Yeah, Scotty, and then I know they still go back and fish it.
The river's shy of, you want to screw one up, put a frickin' golf course near it. That'll do you. They want to then have that pesticide, have that blue-green algae bloom come down. Had that happen down one of the rivers, I think it was the Pine, wiped out a section of that. But they're resilient, they do come back. And again, a little of that comes back. It's so heavily guided. I remember when this started, and I'm one of the first people I recall doing this was John Clusing, and who's a great guide back there, still is, and his kids are guiding now, and he had a real hard time letting a client touch a fish. And I'm pretty certain it's where I got it from, was that I think it was him, because at first I thought he was an egomaniac, because he just wanted his picture with all, and then I realized he didn't want to see you juggle a steelhead.
Yeah, didn't want to see.
And I wouldn't let people handle a hen. I would break your line in a lot of cases. If I saw a hen, if we hooked a hen, they'll abort their eggs. And I would cut the line if I thought it was somehow stressing it. And I would just break the line and leave the fly in her, because they'd abort their eggs. But I can't tell you how many pictures, and salmon didn't really give a shit, but every time you see somebody like this with a hen salmon, there's like this orange stream coming out her ass full of eggs, and they're just, I guess they didn't think about it. They do now. You just don't let that happen. I don't know about salmon because they're planted so heavily, but the steelhead, a lot of those rivers aren't planted at all anymore. And so they're pretty kit glove with their fish.
I wish I could remember which guide said this, and I'm sure it may not have even been their original line, but they were talking about basically why they don't let, or why they teach their clients how to handle fish. And if a client drops one, they go, hey, watch out, that's my 401k.
Yeah, it's a great line.
They are
I've never heard
invested
it,
in
but it's
these
a great
rivers.
line.
Yeah, that's my 401k. I mean, it's the other thing that I think is it's an interesting dynamic. Like, I personally don't want to see anybody else on the river. I like the solitude aspect of it. That's why I like going in fishing places where I don't see anyone else, walking further than people. But at the same time, and I know it was in a video that Fly Lords did with Flip Pallet after Lefty passed, and basically said, Lefty tried to get so many people into the sport because, especially my generation and younger generation, if they don't have a natural touchstone, if they're not out experiencing nature, they're not going to care about it.
They don't give a shit.
And if they don't care about it, it's not going to be conserved, right? So the more people we can bring into the sport, the more likely it is that, people are going to care about these things and want to conserve the resource and keep it happy and healthy.
We've talked about this a lot, and it's a very true statement. And and everybody's worried about it. I mean, we're worried about it right now, cutting this or that and what's going to happen. But in the reality of this, in particular this state, if you will just abort, you're guaranteed going to get 10 fish at the Madison and take a right and go to one of the other creeks. You can have all the solitude. You want solitude? I had a freaking mountain lion pull a deer up a bank by me. That's solitude.
Yeah, solitude's not as comfy as you think it might be.
You like being here because there's no freaking rattlesnakes, and there's nothing going to come down and eat you. Yeah, they sell 100 cans of bear spray a year. I mean, not a day. And it's like a little of it's just, you just need to get out there and be. We just don't want to leave the sanctuary of we know if we go to $3 bridge and walk 150 yards upstream and hit the third boulder on the right, we're going to get a rainbow out of it like that. Just instantly like that, right?
So this is totally random, but you jogged my memory about, leaving Solitude. Whenever I go, there's places I go fish where I bring bear spray and a gun. Mm-hmm. And
there's places you go without those?
Yeah.
Oh, weird. Sometimes I don't like sitting on that bear spray, but...
Yeah, my gun's a little bigger than yours.
Genetics.
So, between the lakes is an area very close to us. Was it 6 miles less?
7.
7 miles. Where there's known to be grizzlies there.
All the time.
And yet, I feel safe there. I still bring spray there most of the time. A lot of people don't. Now, I remember one time last summer, I'm getting out of my car. We did a morning float and we're doing an evening float filming. I was like, I'm going to go fish for a few hours in between. They're eating hoppers like crazy up there. And I park, I get out of my car. I'm like, 20 feet into the river. I go, shit, I left my spray in my car. Well, it's high noon and there's maybe 100 people.
That's when I see them always. I knew.
I was like, I'm not going to see a bear. I'm good. Well, I'm out fishing the run, and there's a guide up above me who starts running downstream waving. And I'm like, what's this guy doing? And I look out, and I think it's his dog that's out in the rapids. It looks like Dudley. It looks like a border collie. So I start running out into the rapids, to try to go catch this thing before it goes over the next dump, and I realize it's a black bear. So I
Did you get him?
I turn around. I know you're not supposed to run from bears, but I turn around and I fucking launched down in that river. And then, started warning the other people. It disappeared into the bushes. And
I've seen...
I've gone 2.5 years without seeing one.
I've seen a couple grizzlies up there. I've never seen a black bear up there. I saw one at night on the ridge line. That's the only one that scared me. Because I'm walking back from the lake to my car.
Yeah.
And I get up on that hill and I see him. He's horizoned. You can see him.
Yeah,
and then he goes away. Well, I don't know which side.
Yeah,
I don't know which side he's on.
Yeah.
I still got 200 yards to get to that car. But there's a book called Cache Lake County, and there's a picture in it where the guy's running. I think the implication is that he died from fear. And it says, old Sam let his mind get the best of him or something like that. It's my dad's favorite book. And I didn't read it until long after he died. And the whole thing is he panicked. And my dad used to tell me, I've read that, I've seen that picture 100 times since I was 10 years old, he always say. And he was a survival expert, right? And taught survival and shit. And he'd always tell me, don't panic, think, That's really easy to sit when you're in your dad's office or, gun room and I got 100 guns around me and don't panic. Yeah, I would never. It's another thing when the freaking bear disappears.
Yeah.
But I keep hearing that voice going, okay, I would walk 5 steps and stop. You can hear a bear walking. Yeah. They are not silent.
They're not quiet
And I would
creatures.
stop, but I can also hear the river. And I'm like, which side's he on? And I walk another 5-10 steps. And I've got plenty of firepower, but it's hard to hit what you can't see.
Yep.
I don't have a light. And so now I'm like, oh God. And I said, so I get to the truck and there's nothing on me yet. And I'm like, okay, be cool. Be cool. Honey bunny, be like the Fonz. Remember that? Okay, bunny, be cool. So
when I
got that door, I jumped in that car instantly. It's holy shit. We were talking about something before about you want Solitude in the river. When they were going to re-reg something, I don't remember which one it was, and I was asking people about, they were doing that skewed survey that they did, and they asked the question, do you think, the first one was, do you think there's too many people on the river?
Talk about framing.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And the second one was, if there were less people, you think you'd have a better experience.
Oh yeah, whoever wrote the survey should be fired.
Yeah, well, thank you. But anyway, so I started asking these guys, and I asked 2 old dudes, and they were both in their 80s. And I said, and because, they'd come in the shop all the time. I said, did you ever do that survey? Oh yeah, I seen that survey, I says, how do you feel about that? And the one guy says, I'm old enough to tell the truth. I wish not one of you son of a bitches was on this river. He looked me right in the eye. I go, fair enough.
Yeah.
And the other guy said everything except the son of a bitch. He says,
Thanks for being honest.
I wish none of you were on this river.
Yeah,
I want it all to myself. I don't want anybody looking at my cast. I don't want anybody helping me. And
standing in my fishing hole, whatever.
Whatever. It's just that, but I love that one guy. I wish none of you son of a bitches were on this. Have a good day.
Yeah, happy Monday to you too.
Yeah. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I also do enjoy, it depends if I'm in the mood for it or not. Sometimes I do enjoy bullshitting with people in the parking lot. And
you and 6 other guides go down the river every night in your little drunken boat fest.
Well, that's what I mean.
I don't want to see
It depends
you
on the
son of a
mood I'm
bitches
into,
either.
right? There's times where I want to go out and have a place to myself, and it's kind of a cathartic experience. And there's other times I do it as it can be kind of a party with this crew, which is really fun.
What you really
I'm
want
multi-dimensional, Kelly.
You would
That's what I'm
like to
getting at.
own the South Island of New Zealand, in other words, so you could just have it your way.
Yeah, I want it my way. Yeah,
And then you could privatize it.
I'd love to.
Yeah,
do you know how I can do that?
But yet you hate all these privatized people, and so you want it all for yourself.
I'm a hypocrite.
Yes. I was just getting to that.
I think everyone is. Everybody says, "Oh yeah, shared resources." Well, if you had a chance to have it to yourself,
if I
most
just
people would
handed
say
you
yes.
$1 billion and said to you, you can buy the Ruby River with this, you'd already be there with a big fence around it telling me to get off my property.
Yeah, and I'd call my friends and let them fish it because
Yeah, your friend list would get really short too.
The definition of an asshole is if you're not in my boat. Yeah.
Definition of a friend is who you let in the gate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. No. Yes, I'm a hypocrite. I'm fully aware of that. But
this is one of the most fortunate countries in the world for what we have research. You got to fight for it. Every day you got to. That's why this is a great little organization, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. You got to fight for it. We had to do it everywhere I've ever been. I've seen it come and go, and eminent domain acquisition, where things happen. We have a great country where we get a voice, and you just got to chime in. Mm-hmm. You're not going to win everything, but at least you got a say in it. Yep. It ain't Russia.
It ain't Russia.
I think we did that a week or two ago. This ain't Russia, Danny.
Although they probably have some.
They had some great water.
Incredible fishing.
Of course. Haven't you done that?
No, I haven't.
Thought you went and steal it or rainbowed up there.
No.
I'm surprised.
Heard a lot
rich
about
guy
it.
like yourself.
Yeah, me. No, I've heard.
We've never really talked about that whole public land thing and all that.
We should do an episode entirely on that.
It's important. When I was younger, when I was your age, I wouldn't have said that. I didn't really. It was too stupid to even think about it. I just worried about fish and chicks. So, but it probably, because I think I don't think it's any more prevalent now where stealing our land and stuff like that. I think it was done differently back in the day. And there was so much of it that I don't think really thought about it. Imagine 30 years ago in Montana and you're worried about losing land. They're still trying to get 500,000 people in the state or something. It's like they're begging people to come see us. But I don't know. It's a interesting conversation right there to go from. We started on fishing streamers around the world, those type of things, and it's gone into saving your land. But we're so lucky, and especially when you consider Montana and how close we are to those southern idiots that the Colorado, New Mexico, all those where they let those dumbasses, they own the bottom of the river.
Yeah,
talk about
that
the
is the
dumbest things
worst.
to ever happen on Earth.
Our water laws
and we're
are
like
so
a state
cool.
away from that.
Yeah.
And so, I
it's
don't know
public
if
resource.
I remember the first time I saw it was the Jackson down in what state is that? I don't know. Tennessee?
Oh.
No, it's down there, the Queen's water. It says we didn't screw the Queen. She can kiss my ass.
Yeah, we won that war.
Yeah, and it's the Queen's water. So I think it's in Tennessee.
And Mississippi?
Huh?
Not
No,
Jackson,
I think it's
Mississippi.
no, it's the Jackson River.
Gotcha.
There's a short section of water that is owned by the Queen. Well, tell her to pay the freaking taxes on it.
Yeah.
Earn her freaking VAT tax. Kiss my ass. And so, but I mean, yeah, I'm sure that'll get somebody's hackle up. But we've been pretty fortunate that we still have our water up here. We'll do that in another show.
We'll do a whole show about that.
We'll get Hillary in here. We'll have them.
Bring in somebody who's knowledgeable on that.
Hillary. I just saw her on Hutchins.
Yeah.
I suppose she'll have to bring that boyfriend of hers. Evan.
I don't know.
He worked for me for a year.
Probably a great guy. All right, well, I think that's a great spot to end today's show. We'll get into all the public access and water rights stuff in a later issue, but hopefully you enjoyed that kind of.
That went everywhere.
Yeah, it went everywhere. I enjoyed that. I thought that was fun.
But I don't know. A lot of analogies on those ski people that aren't going to go over well.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
But this thing was brought to you by SlideIn.com. If you liked it, we don't hit the like button on this thing though, do we?
Oh, no, no.
Do you?
Ideally,
Like and
people
subscribe
do.
or whatever you do.
Like, subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe.
Send it to your friends. Our growth
whatever.
helps us.
So, but we really appreciate it. And that highlights of this one is that I can't wait as many analogies as we can get about the ski. Or if you can change into something else, I don't care what it is.
Yeah, music, sports, whatever it is.
Whatever. This could be like the world's greatest comment world. And we'll see what happens. We'll definitely read out the good ones. So hope you liked it. Thanks for watching. Or listening.
Yeah, thanks to our listeners too.